welcome back to the Skills Provision podcast. On today's episode, we are discussing demonstrations, technical demonstrations, how we here at Skills Provision take on or approach taking on of new clients and how we demonstrate to them all the services that we have to offer alongside how we approach recruiting. On today's episode, there's myself, Francesca. There's also Pete.
Hi.
There's also Chris.
Hello, everybody.
And for those of you who haven't already done so, I'll get this in early. Please subscribe, follow, share, like, whatever you can do, whatever platform you're listening on or listening to this podcast on, please get the word out there, spread the news. So the way that I'm going to discuss about how we go through demonstrations is just kind of talk through as if I was demonstrating to you out there and explain some of the points that we highlight when giving a demonstration to clients. Now, all of these things are based on companies or individuals that have come to us and kind of said, look, we're looking for recruitment support. They've given us some basic details. And from there, we then go on to explain a bit about here and how we at Skills Provision go about fulfilling their requests, while also showcasing how we operate and what we have going for us as a business that in some cases makes us unique from other recruiters. So the first thing that we will come on to is the advert production. So when showing or when having a conversation with a potential client, we like to show them the adverts that we've created, showing them examples of the type of work that we have created. Now, these adverts are unique, and that's something that's really important, and Pete will further elaborate on this in a second, is that all of our adverts we aim to get up within 24 hours and try to have as much unique content as possible. Now, the adverts are then placed on our international site, and if relevant, also placed on some of our other sites, depending on the type of role. Now, Pete, do you want to just highlight the real key point as to why our adverts are done and created so uniquely?
Hi. Yes. Well, it's not just unique. It's ticking certain boxes to allow a page, be that an advert or anything else, to have strong visibility, primarily within search engines. So a job advert, if you imagine that the client copied the job description because they're after vehicle mechanics from an online source, which was copied from another online source, from another advert, from another job description, and just passed around, then the words we used within the job description are going to be replicated on hundreds, if not thousands, of adverts on the web. Now, if the business purchased adverts, wasn't online, didn't rely on free search engine traffic, organic, then it wouldn't really matter what you did, how you did it, as long as you expressed the job, the nature of the job, and the people that you're looking for. Because we primarily go after organic free traffic in large amounts, then we have to, in many ways, pamper to the needs, wishes, demands of search engines, which is, I suppose, if you look at how a search engine works, for any given keywords, they want to display what they consider the most relevant and the best content for those terms. And that gets very complicated when you start breaking it down. So if you're saying chef vacancy in the southwest of England, as I said, Bristol, and there's 500 job adverts going after related keywords for that in that area, defining the best from the worst and everything in between is very complicated. What we do is we primarily work wherever we can on content that is produced from the minds of people that are writing it not online sources, not relying too heavily on job descriptions, although you do have to within an advert, and producing as much as possible unique content, possibly looking at it as doing the hard yards rather than the easy yards. And the net result of this sometimes is not often shown instantly or straight away or within the first few years. But if you continue to work with unique content, producing quality words, quality sentences, paragraphs, the spelling, the grammar, the whole thing, producing enough content, not spamming, not repetition of words. So just clean content written for the user, not for the search engines. In time, you can produce, as we have done, very strong job boards from years of only dealing in, let's say, clean content. Unique content, it can be quite difficult. It's not really unique. No words are ever unique because we formulate sentences in certain ways that, if we say clean content, we've not cheated. And then also the result of this, as we say ourselves, that we produce fit for purpose adverts, but not just fit for purpose where the client goes, I like that. Also, when they're uploaded to their destination, the impact can be dramatic and very favourable for skills provision. So because I work in the technical area, it's down to me to educate, quality check, teach, do the work myself, make sure that every box is being ticked, because it's almost like the benefit is retrospective. The benefit, we've just opened a new section on the website which is also contextually based, and by doing the right thing continually at the beginning, we will reap the benefit in, say, 6 months' time. Big time. Most organisations, just finish off with this, most people, organisations, internet users want fast, quick and easy. Very few want the opposite, probably, if any. But if you understand how online works and how you can generate very powerful platforms and compete with businesses that have massive amounts of money, then you need to do things in a set manner, and it's doing the hard yards and repetition and keeping it going. And that's where I have strong beliefs in, not just in how I do this work, but also can be backed up factually with analytical data that it does work.
No, absolutely. And as you say, sometimes the impact is felt instantly, sometimes it's not. But just going back to the job advert, what we tried to also include, and Chris, do kind of jump in if you think there's anything that's missed, is obviously the introducing it, making sure that you're selling, as we all know out here, that when you're advertising, you are selling to the job seeker. Where we can, ensuring that the salary and compensation, the package is highlighted. Because Chris, what's your take on including salary within a job description, job advert?
The example I always give is the jeweller's shop. If you walk past a jeweller's shop and you see a watch in there and it hasn't got a price, how often are you going to actually stop and go into the jeweller's and inquire about that specific watch? If you actually give a price range or an exact cost for an article and it's within your affordability range, then you're more likely to walk into the shop. So I'm 100% in favour of giving salary ranges.
And then the other thing is obviously responsibilities, highlighting key areas that are going to be responsible for, and then requirements. And with the requirements section, something that we're really trying to advocate for, especially in this skill shortage situation that many companies are facing, is that highlighting what are the essential skills to do the role, and then maybe what are desirable, because we've had examples, haven't we, Chris, of where people have come with a list of 20 things that they want someone to have.
Yes, it is ridiculous. Certainly in IT, that was the case. And we simply said to people, list your top 3 to 5, which if you want to make them mandatory, recognise that you are shutting down your pool of candidates having 5 requirements. So if you can get away with 3, even better. But if you want to list 20, you'll be lucky to find one person in the world who will tick all of those boxes, and it becomes counterproductive. And again, with IT over the years, we've had plenty of battles about their recruitment processes and the number of times they wish to interview people. But
that's another subject. That's something for another day. And then, so when we do also create these adverts, there's something that we do internally, which is list some relative or related skilled keywords, which go into the back end of the system, which then helps aid our matching process and profile matching process. But I'll come on to that in a little bit. Now, with these adverts, not only do they go on our site, which has a lot of visibility, and again, Pete, feel free to jump in with some information on this in just a second, but we also then will syndicate it out onto other job boards, social media, groups, and within our partner network, if suitable. Pete, do you also want to just add anything in terms of data-wise to back those things up?
We're probably looking at in the region of 3 million page views for job adverts per year at the moment.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, something also that we have recently been doing, well, within this 6 months to year, is adding video adverts. So short summary and taking advantage of things such as YouTube Shorts or Facebook Reels or Instagram posts, where adding a short video clip to the advert, because we recognise that in this day and age, the way people consume content, they consume it in a variety of different ways, and often video can sometimes be a good way to bring them in. I know for me personally, it's often, I'm embarrassed to say, some of the time I spend scrolling on different things at times, and you can get lost in it. So it's a really good way of getting it out there, and just something a bit different, and just a different way of getting the message out there. So when we have launched the advertising, obviously we're going to get candidates coming from left, right, and centre. Now, what is key is that for all of our candidates, they have to come back to our website to complete the application process. Now, the reason we do this is to ensure that candidates are serious about the process, but also obviously to make sure that we have their permission to move things forward. And also, as part of our process, they create something called a profile, which I've touched on in previous episodes. In fact, last week's episode was on profiles. So if you want to know more, go back and listen to that episode. Now, when they create a profile, they've got to fill out various bits of information about their skills, their experience. And then when their profile is validated, they're free to apply for any different jobs that are on our site. And obviously they may apply for a job today, and unfortunately they may not be suitable. But what it does mean is that in 6 months time, 12 months time, 18 months time, if something else came up that is suitable, they can be considered for that role. And our system, providing, and there is an element of human sensibility here, that they've attached sensible keywords, and it's something that's technical, we're looking to develop further. But when we are asking people with their profile keywords to create things, it's including things if they were a vehicle mechanic, such as vehicle mechanic, auto technician, vehicle repairer, not things such as communication, listening, reading, writing, etc. Now, when that advert is launched, anyone that's already in the database will be matched if their keywords match up. And also any candidates that come from the job boards that have been then directed to then go on and apply for the job will all enter into stage 1. And this is where we collate all of the applications that come in. I'm conscious that I'm talking a lot. Is there anything that either of you two want to add at this stage?
We could go back and ask a question. Why are we so keen on getting people to agree to a demonstration? My short answer to that is we struggle to pull enough information easily from would-be employers to give us sufficient information to enable us to actually respond to them with a detailed quotation or anything like that. A few years ago, we used to keep statistics on such things, and 86%, I recall, failed to provide adequate information. Now, the demo is a way that we have come up with that enables us to pull through more information relatively painlessly from the employer.
Yeah, and Pete was instrumental in getting and looking at it from, and I think this is where, for those out there listening, it's having the different viewpoints. And when you're very much in the job, you can sometimes become a bit narrow-minded about stuff, and having a different perspective as to what outsiders may be looking in at. And that is where I think Pete took much more of the stance of looking at what would a potential employer be interested in seeing, what other strings to our bow do we have that we can then potentially entice them with, what makes us different. Now,
yeah, I think on that point, Francesca, I think that's where I'm not even sure if I disagree with Chris, but I certainly don't 100% agree with what he's saying. But it is accurate what he's saying. But it's the selling point, and this is where you have the recruiter and the potential customer, and both have opposing needs, wishes, ideas, and the way they operate, and it can be problematic. That in between, though, there's a lot of fog and there's a lot of problems between the recruiter and the potential clients. And the main reason for having the demonstration, whilst there are many side benefits, and Chris has touched on one, is to sell the services that we are offering to a customer. Because all too often, in most instances, the client has no idea what they are specifically paying for and buying in, and recruitment services are not cheap. So it's like, what are you exactly going to do for me? And a lot of them will be like, well, we're going to write an advert and we're going to stroll around and you're not really answering the question as to what are you exactly going to do. And when you break it down, it is quite toxic, laughable, and wrong in many ways. And maybe this is why there are so many recruitment agencies of various sizes, millions, all operating in this fog, which is good for them because they are not seen for what they're actually doing. And we blow the fog away and we give a demonstration, which is very hard to contextualize as we're doing today, but a lot easier to do, to give a visual. And when Francesca's sharing screens and showing people graphs, data, the actual system that we use is a lot easier. And I wholeheartedly believe that in for the whole package as to what we offer more than some of the popular brand names that are out there that lead up PLCs, that lead up recruitment services. I think they're more money orientated. They become more the shareholder pressure. They're driven for themselves. This is where the recruiter always makes the mistake. They want to go for themselves. They're working for themselves. They're not looking at what they're doing and how to improve it for the benefit of the customer. There's a bit of that, but there's not enough. And this is where we really do go to town. And some of these things that we are going to cover on this podcast that we're offering potential clients. It's fairly groundbreaking stuff. The difficulty is having the visibility to showcase all this, and that's the challenge that people like me do have. So it's selling and not taking. Well, we recruit. Well, I know you recruit, but why should I use your services? And probably there needs to be more employees out there challenging recruiters to say, show me what you do, because most of it's a closed book, and it's a closed book for a reason. They don't want to show what they're doing, and I'll get on to that later. My actual thoughts on a lot of this towards the end of this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So as we gather everyone into stage 1, we will then begin our filtration process. Now, we're really big on, as an international recruiter, where possible, giving international candidates the opportunity. Now, we understand that not every client is in a position that they're able to offer things such as work permits or visas. So unfortunately, some candidates will get rejected on the basis of that. But what we are really big on doing is trying to be as ethical as possible with promoting candidates that have the right skill set and are able to do the job. So what we mean by that is that not disregarding people on gender, disability, nationalities, etc., to ensure that everyone's getting a fair chance and an equal opportunity. The other thing, especially given this day and age, and Chris, I'm sure you can agree, is that while everyone wants the perfect candidate, the reality is that they may have someone that is not going to be perfect. And we really do try to get them to consider the alternatives or transferable skills or people that are a 70-80% match. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I would. And you missed out a very important group to which I belong. It's the old people. Yeah. So we don't discriminate because someone happens to be 75, for example. We don't automatically chuck them on the scrap heap. We will look to see if there is any form of engagement, but we are limited as to what we can do very often by government rules and regulations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I said, there's some things that unfortunately we can't change, but we are trying to promote as much the candidates and their experience, their suitability to as many employers as possible, and getting them to consider the other options that maybe they haven't. Can they take someone that has come from a slightly different background? Can they take someone that has done this maybe 10 years ago but not done it for a while? Can they look to reskill? What other options that are out there? Now, what we then do is move any of those that on obviously initial review look to be suitable and move them into what we call stage 2. Now, stage 2 is where us in the recruitment team will then go through and filter candidates further by having pre-screening interviews and gather supporting documentation. Now, some supporting documentation may be things such as copies of certificates, copies of driving licenses, copies of qualifications, images of work if they're working in an industry where they are able to get those sorts of things. Those are just some examples of documents. What we also do is then gather and write up a short summary and give 2 scores when shortlisting candidates. These benchmark scores, as we call them, we give them an overall suitability rating and an English score. Now, the English score is just purely based on the interview English that and how we found them during the interview, with 10 being, say, a native English speaker, and then anything in between. Now, obviously, there are some exceptions to the rule where, say, a candidate has got a formal qualification. And for one example that we can give where we're doing a lot of international stuff is if candidates already have IELTS in place, we can refer to maybe a score that they've obtained in there, which can give a bit more reference. Or Chris, what's the European?
The language framework, yes, which basically is the same as IELTS. One side uses scores, the other side uses letters. And so like a B2 in Europe is equivalent to level 4 with IELTS.
B1 I think is level 4, and B2 is sort of 5. And then the suitability score is an overall score taking into account their experience, how they've performed in the pre-screening interview, the supporting documentation, if there are other things that they've provided, maybe different things that have come out of that call. Now, one other thing that we do gather, and it's becoming more and more popular, especially when dealing with the international side, where English is obviously such a key thing for a lot of countries, is videos. Now, these videos can take many different shapes and forms. One can be a video of them actually creating something. So say they're a chef, a video of them actually cooking. But say they're working in a more front-facing or a technical role where they need to understand and explain. We'll often get candidates doing an introductory video about themselves, telling the would-be or prospective employer about themselves, about the skills, why they want the job. And I know that have found that this can be quite a thing that's become more and more popular with our clients.
Certainly, if you're having to dig deep for candidates and they may be coming from places where your clients may be not familiar with recruiting from, and sending pictures of the work that they have done and then supporting that with a personal video, it's an icebreaker, really. And
perfect word.
Whilst you sometimes wonder why clients say no, if they've said no and there's been a good video in place, we do challenge the client and say, why are you saying no to this candidate? He appears to tick the boxes. His spoken English is good. His suitability rating is right. So why are you saying no? And we do manage to get clients to change their perspective. It doesn't happen that often, but you're never quite sure how the decision-making team at the employer's end is going to react. So yeah. It helps.
Absolutely, and I think I like that a video is kind of an icebreaker, because what I always say to the candidates when they're asking, oh, well, what should I put in a video? Sorry, I'm saying it's your chance to introduce yourself. And as much as HR teams, whatever, they're looking at CVs all the time, a video gives you a chance to tell your story from your perspective and a bit more personable than just words on a page. And I do think it's just a nice addition. Now, I know not everyone is quite happy being in front of a camera. I sympathize with people sometimes, but what we say is that we're not looking for professional editing, professional all of this, but it's your chance to kind of have that initial experience. And in some ways, it is really no different than when you have video interviews, which have now become such a popular means of interviewing.
There is an additional benefit because a candidate can have as many tries as they want at producing a personal video before they actually submit it to us, and therefore they are not vulnerable, as they can be in the interview situation, to weather conditions. In the last fortnight, we've experienced some very bad weather in Africa, and we must have had 6 or 8 interviews which have had to be rescheduled because it's been raining heavily somewhere or another in Africa and the connections won't work. But the client knows from the personal video that when the weather's kind, the content is okay on the personal video, so they're much more likely to persevere than if they've not had that personal video.
Yeah, and I think, and this is just my own personal opinion, I kind of feel also there's a chance to make perhaps an initial even personal connection, or you can, and I think anyone who's worked in recruitment probably is guilty of this, or anyone who's worked in HR. I think unfortunately CVs, you can kind of become a bit numb to them to an extent. I think sometimes you get so many CVs, you forget there is a person on the other side. And I do think that video brings to life the fact that there is a person on the other side, which does, in my opinion, I think help people take the process more seriously and become more engaged in it. Pete, is there anything you'd like to add as far as any of those sections I've just talked about?
No, that's fine. That's good.
No. Okay. So what we then do is then take any of the candidates that have been shortlisted from the pre-screening and move them into the area where the employer will then view them, which is the client zone. Now, the client zone is a unique area for each of our employers, dedicated secure area where they will have access to any of those shortlisted candidates. Now, it's branded for yourself, and within there you will then see any of those candidates that we've moved forward, along with the supported documentation, the comments, all of those things that we have then highlighted to you. Now, we've had some really good feedback from people with the client zone. It's a great way of keeping everything up together, because unfortunately everyone knows that you can get thousands of emails in a day or a week, and having everything all up together in one place is just a really good way of having a collaborative, is the word we tend to use here, a collaborative area for not only the recruitment team but also the employers, and just having it all up together. Now, in terms of from there, obviously when we present the candidates, it is then down to the employer to make a decision if they wish to interview. And from there, we use that area to communicate, yes, they'd like to interview, or no, and if necessary, find out more information about candidates, and then move things forward. And then hopefully, obviously, candidates are successful in obtaining the position and hired. Is there anything either of you two would like to add as far as the client zone goes?
I think it enables us as recruiters to have a bit more discipline in terms of following up with employers who generally stretch the envelope as far as they can in terms of actually making decisions. You have visibility of the date that the candidate went through to the end client, and that then enables you to follow up without having to dive into, as you say, 10, 20 different email exchanges.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does. And I think for them also, because potentially we're not naive to the fact that we might not be the only agency that someone's working with. So I think it's good for them to know where everyone's coming from. Pete, is there anything you wanted to add on the client zone?
I think it's a very powerful, top quality, collaborative piece of software that the recruiters will say it's good for us because of this, that, and the other. And we've already seen the reviews we've received from clients who've used the software, that they're very impressed, and it was easy to use and very fit for purpose. Everything was laid out in many ways, a simplification of the recruitment process as you get towards the end, and laying everything out for them to use. So it's almost in many of these software type solutions, you know, you have the two sides. The recruiter wants to have everything their way, obviously. The client, the paying customer, they want it their way. And people like me, which can be very difficult at times, sitting in the middle, scratching my head thinking, all right, I can't win by favouring either one side. I've got to be neutral and serve both. And I think the client zone, not perfectly, and there will be version updates coming all the time. I think it serves both areas very well.
No, I would agree, and it allows us to showcase, I think, our candidates in the best light we possibly can. And I think at the end of the day, we've mentioned us and the employers. We can't forget why we're all here, to help the job seekers into the role. So I think it also gives us a chance to showcase them in the best way possible. Now, a couple of other things that we also touch on during the demo is about our replacement period, which typically for us is 30-day replacement. So if a candidate is not suitable, or they find that maybe the job is not for them and they decide to leave, we have 30 days that we offer. These sort of terms and things can be negotiated on a case-by-case basis. And the other thing is that typically we work in contingency recruitment, so there is nothing to pay for us until a candidate starts work. Obviously, every case, like I say, is different, so all of those sort of things will be discussed on a case-by-case basis. Now, Pete, is there anything else that you want to add from a technical perspective that you think is unique to us when giving a demonstration beyond the things that I've mentioned?
Yeah, I'd like to summarise. In fact, I'll come back to that. That's yeah. In fact, yeah, we'll run with it. I'd like to summarise because it's been a little bit long-winded, and you've sort of talked your way through a lot of each section, which it can be hard for a listener sort of grasping exactly what is covered in a demo. So I'll just run from top to bottom in terms of what we're doing, and we're very open, and this is all these sections are covered in more detail when the demonstration has been given, backed up with data if possible, graphs, any information that we can openly share. So we've got advert production, a top quality approach, widespread syndication, powerful job board, best in class aggregators, social marketing. Our footprint's approximately 300,000 strong at this moment in time. Video production of either done by the recruiter, advertising the ad or covering the adverts, or the candidates covering themselves. Automated matching system, totally bespoke, 3-stage recruitment system, vast processing area, pre-interviews, benchmark scoring, and probably the most important, which is missed so many times in recruitment, the unsuccessful are informed, they're not moved forward, and finally the client zone. So there's the full itinerary as such broken down.
Yeah, the whistle stop tour.
Yeah, if we look at my personal opinion on all this, is that companies that cannot give a demonstration, are not willing to give a demonstration of to how they deal with recruitments, the systems they use, they shouldn't be used, basically. Or my own personal view, is probably quite incendiary to the recruiter. People listening into this, maybe even you or Chris, is I strongly believe that if a large suite of services that are powerful that we have is not available to the paying customer, then the maximum that should be charged is 5%, because all people are doing is leeching off the clients by taking the job description, cutting and paste a very quick job to produce an advert, and then basically spending half their life on LinkedIn trawling around to try and find manpower. It's crude, it's awful, it's deceptive in a way, because the paying customer is not really sure how these people are operating, and this is top to bottom. This is go back many years ago, and Chris gave me the mandate of we need USPs. We need to have a powerful selling set of tools that we're selling to the customers to impress and to utilize in the search and trolls and placing. And I believe now we have, I wouldn't go as far as say the best out there, but certainly we'll be in the top 5%. And because we're so open and honest, because it's just not there. Even the likes of Hayes will not take you through Page, Hayes, Adecco, all of them. They will not take clients through step by step how they fully operate and show it. I know that for a fact. And we will. So in the end, you just go with the best approach you can for the customers and the recruiters. And then it just becomes a matter of time and working on the visibility angle, because it is an online business. So demos are very powerful for skills provision, and we are because we've got nothing to hide. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, we'll show you, and really why we charge what we charge, it's all laid out.
Yeah, and I think it's a balancing act between everything, though, in terms of there are certain companies that and we all know, because we've all like been involved in different ones, where there are certain companies who are more interested in the whole picture. Some people are only interested in a part of the picture. Some people, we have conversations where they're like, I don't care about anything. They're only just interested in, can you find me people? And so that's what's also really important, is we're not here to say, look, we're going to tell you every single thing that you want to know, because that is the other beauty of it, is recognizing, and that's where us in the recruitment team do also need to recognize the client that we're speaking to, or the potential client we're speaking to, about potentially what they're going to look for. And that's where we've talked about everything that we can cover, but it may be that, look, from conversation we've already had, maybe a brief call, that look, we're going to touch these key points. And that's the thing, is we've also got to be adaptable and recognize that for a large organization, for example, they'd be maybe more interested, and I know that I've asked you, Pete, before, for additional data that someone has asked for, but you might have someone else who, honestly, they don't care. They just want to know, do you have people? And we can say, look, yeah, we've got people. Look at our database. We've got thousands of people registered. So I think it's also about recognizing that this does offer a great way for us to sell the service and sell the business and sell what we're offering. And it is nice.
I don't see the relevance to that point, really, Francesca, because if you go into a shop and you want to buy the top of the range Rab Gore-Tex jacket, for example, you might just go in there, pick it off, extra large, that's me, pick it off the hook and be gone. And that's fine. But then again, and they could be very expensive jackets, and then again, you may not be sure the difference between the Rab, Berghaus, North Face. So you ask the assistant, and they run through, because they've got the core knowledge, they've got the experience, they know their job. So they go through all the points with you, and then you make your decision. So what people want from us is irrelevant, but the fact is that we have a full suite of services that we offer. They don't want to listen to it, or they're not, yeah, that's fine. Well, that's okay. You know, like I touched on right at the beginning, everything's got to be fast, quick, and easy. And that can be as also the clients, everybody, the employers as well, where everyone should take recruitment serious, because it is such a serious subject for businesses. And
if you don't buy into the process, then inevitably sometimes you can end up in a wrong situation with the wrong candidate, because you've not necessarily invested the time or in the process, that you've gone for maybe what seems to be the perfect candidate, when actually someone that was only 70% matching has got the best all-round suitability.
How do you define the best candidates? You know what I mean? It's from my own perspective, it's something that it's very difficult to measure and to be accurate on. And I would say it's a mathematical equation between suitability and longevity in post. Because if people are moving around left, right, and centre like at such a rate, that's massive. For medium to large size organisations can be crippling. And obviously, if people are not suitable, that's just as bad. But for us, it's, breaking things down, looking at the CVs, people are moving. This guy's he's had 700 jobs in about 10 years. This person has shown loyalty and comes across as being loyal. He's got an ethical standpoint, and this is probably where people need to be a little bit more in tune with the recruiter. I'm external to it, so I don't have the battle scars as such, but I believe that the employer should be very much twin to the recruiter and what the recruiter's trying to say, to the advice in terms of this suitability. Mm-hmm. Because the person that may not be the best on paper could be the one that stays there for 10 years.
Absolutely. And you would agree with that, wouldn't you, Chris? Because in terms of, we've had some people where you may think, okay, on the surface, an initial review, because they don't have every single thing that someone is looking for, they don't necessarily aren't the most perfect candidate, but you've had some people where they've joined and then they've gone on to be the best performers.
Absolutely. I think you just need as a recruiter to be streetwise in the way you approach this, and an educated employer will also be streetwise. If they've been in recruitment for several years, they will know what works for their organisation, and it would be presumptive of us to try and overturn what works for them.
Yeah.
We can supplement it by offering to do demonstrations, but they are an option. It's just part of the equation.
Yeah, and in terms of that, though, at the end of the day, and I think we've said this on multiple podcasts, isn't it, where we are here and we can provide our advice, and the advice comes with the best of intentions. Some people or some organisations are more receptive, some aren't, and the results show when they are, and the results show when they're not. And I think that's the other thing. It's just everyone being engaged in the process, and that's the thing, is that I think something that I personally have found is doing most of the demonstrations is that if I have someone who's engaged from the very beginning, and the demonstration is a good way to get someone engaged and showing them how to use everything and what we're going through, that can often then carry forward into the journey further down. Whereas if you have someone that doesn't engage from the very beginning with a demonstration, can often be the ones that are then the most challenging.
Yeah, you're creating a personal link, and thank goodness, even with artificial intelligence and things like that, we're still in a people business, although sometimes people forget that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's part of the building of a relationship.
Absolutely.
You see that coming through, Francesca, with the people asking for more manpower. So let's say we have a set approach with flexibility running through the core of it, but how it's always the case of the asking yourself, how am I doing? How can I improve? And you get lots of people coming back and asking for more manpower. So they'll start with a number and then it increases over time. Or the customer that comes back later on may have not engaged initially and then comes back for another sitting, or they just win a contract or whatever, and they just want to use your services. We're seeing a lot of that, which indicates that the top to bottom way that we operate, and the open, honest approach we have to recruitment, when we get the clients to work with, it ticks a lot of boxes with them. Otherwise they wouldn't come back, would they? I mean, it'd be stupid to. They should go.
We're drifting a bit off topic here, but it doesn't matter that much. But I think we're enjoying more repeat business now than we've ever enjoyed. And part of that is to do with the solidity of the building of relationship as early as possible and part of that is through demonstrations. So it's part of the jigsaw, but it's not the entire jigsaw.
Yeah.
I think the compliment to the recruitment team that I would pay is in a time of difficult market conditions, it's great that existing customers are coming back asking for more, so you're not having to continually chase to win new clients.
And what I would say is, though, without having the tools to do so, it makes it challenging. And there's all these various different tools that we now have at our disposal, covered in the demo. But then there's also, as I said, the podcast last week, which focused more on profiles. Is having all of these things at our fingertips does make certain things easier. Doesn't the whole process as a whole, there's always challenges. You're always going to be up against it in a lot of ways. But I do think, as we say, this being able to create, because at the end of the day, I don't know which one of you said it, recruitment is a people business. You are dealing with people at all ends. And being able to engage and have that initial conversation, for me, is key. And it does make a difference. It really does make a difference. And
at the end of the day, our satisfaction comes at the end of the process. And I'm not talking about paying you a bonus, Francesca. It comes at the end of the process when we've actually managed to place some people. If it's with existing customers, that's great. If it's with a new customer that has been won through a bidding process or something like that, where we've convinced them that we are the right entity for them to work with, there is a satisfaction in getting those initial placements into place.
Absolutely. And does anyone have anything else that they'd like to add? Obviously, from a system continuation and improvement and in process, there's always going to be new things added on, and there's going to be continual things and as things adapt. But from what we've heard so far from our clients and potential clients, everyone seems to be impressed. Obviously, there's always room for improvement, and hopefully any changes that come will only further enhance those. But is there anything else that you'd like to add, Pete?
I think the future for us primarily will be within the availability profile database. It's growing at a vast rate. We've got some very powerful people in there, and a lot of the services, the modifications to the service will be in terms of getting people within that database into employment, because there's an awful lot, and that's my challenge and my team. And yeah, it's exciting times, and it's as we move towards the wider development of the employment network, where recruitment is just one part.
And the other thing I'd just like to say on that, though, is that for us, a lot of conversations can often start with employers when they found a profile and having those initial things. So what I would say, and it's something that we've recently been saying this week, is that if you're an employer out there and you're looking for workers, just take a chance to have a look at our database. You can see the candidate profile databases. You're welcome to search. If you go onto our homepage, you'll be able to see there's a search for workers section. Have a look. And then if you're interested and you want to know more, book in that technical demonstration with us. It's non-committal. It's a chance for us to explain a bit about us, our services, how we can help. But also we do want to know from you and more from your side. It's not a one-way conversation. It is a dialogue that we want to start and a relationship we want to build. Chris, is there anything else you want to add?
Nothing at all, thank you.
No, okay. All I would say is that for listeners out there, please subscribe, get the notification bell on, follow, share, whatever you can do, whatever platform you're listening on. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, Audio Boom, Apple. Please do tune in, and thank you all for listening. So from me, Francesca, it's goodbye.
And from me, Chris, goodbye.
And from Pete, have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care and see you on the next episode.